Silence speaks louder. I don't need to yell. I don't need to explain. I don't even need to argue. Silence will do what words never could. See, people like you thrive on reaction. You want me to fight, to prove, to beg for the bare minimum, but I won't. I don't need to, because nothing shakes a person's ego like realizing they no longer have access to you. Silence is more powerful than words. It cuts deeper, lingers longer, and does what 1,000 conversations never could. Silence is the weight of everything unspoken, pressing against the mind of the one who never thought they'd lose you. It is the loudest response to someone who once expected a reaction, who once believed they could push, pull, disappear, and return without consequence. Silence is the lesson they never saw coming. When you choose silence, you aren't surrendering, you're taking control. You're removing yourself from a cycle that no longer serves you. People who thrive on their own ego expect resistance. They expect you to plead, to explain, to demand the attention they so easily withhold. But when you stop giving them the energy they once fed off, the entire dynamic shifts. The absence of your voice, your presence, your reaction, it forces them to sit with themselves in a way they never had to before. Ego is built on validation. It survives on knowing there's always someone waiting, someone willing to engage, someone who cares enough to fight. But when that disappears, when the phone stops ringing, when the messages stay unanswered, when the usual back and forth simply ceases to exist, that is when the ego crumbles, because suddenly they aren't in control anymore. Suddenly the one thing they took for granted, the certainty of you, is gone. They will check, they will wonder, they will replay moments in their mind, searching for the last time you reacted, the last time they felt sure of their hold on you. The silence will haunt them because it is unfamiliar, it is uncomfortable, it is something they can't manipulate. Silence removes the power they thought they had. It isn't about revenge. It isn't about proving a point. It's about knowing your worth without needing to announce it. It's about understanding that some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when the other person was never listening to begin with. Silence is not weakness. It is the refusal to engage in a game that was designed for you to lose. At first, they won't take it seriously. They'll assume you're waiting, that this is temporary, that you'll eventually break the silence because you always have. They will test the waters, send something small, check to see if there's still an opening. But when there's no response, no engagement, no sign that their presence still affects you, that's when the weight of your absence starts to settle in. Ego does not handle rejection well. It does not know what to do when faced with indifference. Because the truth is, indifference is more painful than anger. When you're angry, you still care. When you argue, you're still invested. But silence says, I've moved on. Silence says, I no longer have space for this. Silence says everything they never wanted to hear. It will keep them up at night. Not knowing what you're thinking, not knowing if you've truly let go, not knowing if someone else has already stepped into the space they once occupied. Their mind will spiral with possibilities, with scenarios, with questions they will never get answered. That's the power of silence. It forces them to confront their own actions, their own choices, their own failures. They will start to realize what they missed. Not just the presence of you, but the way you made them feel, the way you showed up, the way you poured into them, even when they gave you so little in return. Because now there is nothing. Now there is just the echo of what used to be and no way to bring it back. Silence is closure without explanation. It is the final act of self-respect, the moment you decide that your peace is more valuable than their validation. It is understanding that not every connection deserves a final conversation, that sometimes the greatest statement you can make is simply walking away and saying nothing at all. They will feel it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And when they do, they will understand that silence was never emptiness. It was the loudest thing they had ever heard. I won't argue, beg, or explain. I'll just disappear. I used to think words could fix things, that if I just explained myself enough, if I made you understand, then maybe you would change. Maybe you would see what you had. Maybe you would treat me the way I deserved. Maybe you would stop taking me for granted. But I was wrong. Words don't change people who aren't ready to listen. Words don't matter to someone whose ego is louder than the truth. I won't waste my breath trying to make you see what you refused to notice when I was right in front of you. I won't keep giving you access to my emotions when all you ever did was take advantage of them. You knew I cared. You knew I would always answer, always be there, always try to fix the mess you created, and you counted on that. You thought my heart was a revolving door, that no matter how many times you walked away or pushed me aside, I'd always let you back in. Not this time. This time, I won't argue. There's nothing left to say. I have nothing to prove. You already know exactly who I am. You already know how much I gave, how much I loved, how much I fought for this. You also know how much you didn't. So why waste another breath? Why explain what should have been obvious? I won't beg. I won't sit here and try to convince you to treat me right, to choose me, to see my worth. If you couldn't appreciate me when I was there, you sure as hell don't deserve me now. Love is not a game. Respect is not a negotiation. If I have to beg for it, I don't want it. I won't explain. I won't break down every moment, every reason, every feeling that led me to this decision. You know, deep down, you know, but your ego won't let you admit it. Your pride won't let you face the fact that you pushed too far, that you took too much, that you assumed I would always be there. And maybe that's why this will hurt more than any argument, more than any angry words I could ever throw at you, because there won't be a fight. There won't be a dramatic exit. There will just be silence. And that silence will be unbearable. Because you're used to my presence, you're used to my patience, you're used to me trying, fixing, explaining, you're used to having me in your corner even when you didn't deserve it. But when I disappear, when the calls stop, when the messages don't come, when the arguments you once relied on to reassure yourself that I still care are no longer there, that's when it will hit you. Ego can handle anger. Ego can handle confrontation, but ego cannot handle silence. Silence leaves room for doubt. Silence leaves room for regret. Silence forces you to sit with the choices you made, the damage you caused, the person you lost, and you won't be able to escape it. You will look for me in places you never paid attention to before. In the quiet moments, when you reach for your phone and realize there's nothing there. In the spaces where my presence once filled the room, where my voice once filled the silence. You will hear echoes of conversations you brushed off. Feel the absence of something you always assumed would be there, and you will hate it. You will wonder if I've moved on, if someone else has stepped into the space you left empty, if I even think about you at all, and you will never know. That is the consequence of taking someone for granted. You don't get answers. You don't get closure. You don't get one last conversation where you can try to explain yourself, where you can try to justify everything you did. You get nothing. Because I am done giving you parts of me you never deserved. I am done making it easy for you. I am done letting my emotions be your comfort, my pain be your reassurance that I still care. This time I walk away, and I do it in silence. Not to punish you, not to play games, but because I finally understand that my presence was a gift, and I am done giving it to someone who never valued it. You will feel the loss of me in ways you never expected, and when that moment comes, I won't be there to ease the weight of it. I won't argue, beg, or explain. I'll just disappear. And that will destroy you more than any words ever could. Losing me means feeling the absence where love once lived. At first, it won't seem real. You'll assume this is temporary, just another moment where I pull away, but eventually return. That's how it's always been, right? You pushed, I stayed, you left, I waited, you ignored, I overcompensated. But this time it's different. This time I am not just walking away. I am erasing my presence from your life, not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I finally understand that my love was a place you never appreciated until it no longer existed. At first, you won't feel it. Your ego will convince you that I'll come back, that I'll eventually miss you more than I value myself. That's the thing about people who take love for granted. They assume it will always be there. They assume they will always have access, that no matter how many times they neglect it, love will remain. But that's not how this works. Love doesn't stay where it's not nurtured. It doesn't survive in places where it's taken for granted. Love fades when it is unappreciated, and once it's gone, there is no bringing it back. You won't notice it in the loud moments, in the chaos of your distractions. No, you will feel it in the quiet, in the stillness of the spaces I used to fill. The absence will creep in slowly, in the moments you don't expect. When you wake up and reach for your phone, but there's no message from me. When something happens in your day and for the first time, you realize you have no one to share it with. When you scroll through your memories and see the way I once looked at you, the way I once showed up for you, and realize that no one else ever will in that exact way, the absence will settle into the places where my love once lived. It will sit in the spaces where my laughter used to echo, where my energy once made everything feel alive. You'll go to send a message, but stop yourself because you know I won't respond. You'll wonder if I still think about you, if I miss you, if I regret leaving, but you will never know. And that will eat at you more than any words I could have said. Because love, when it is real, leaves an imprint, and when it's gone, its absence is undeniable. You will look for it in other people. You will chase temporary fixes, moments of validation, distractions to numb the realization that you lost something rare, but none of it will feel the same because love, real, deep, unconditional love, cannot be replaced. It cannot be replicated. And when you lose it, you feel it in ways you never thought possible. You will think back to all the times you assumed I would always be there, all the times you dismissed my feelings, ignored my needs, or made me feel like I was asking for too much when all I ever wanted was to be valued. And in those moments, you will feel the weight of what you lost. Not just a person, but a presence, a love that was steady, patient, unwavering, a love that gave even when it received nothing in return. But now, there is nothing, no explanations, no second chances, no last words to make sense of it all, just silence. And silence has a way of making the truth louder than anything I could have ever said. The truth that I was always enough. The truth that you had something rare and let it slip away. The truth that my love was not something you could take and take from without consequence. Losing me means more than just my physical absence. It means losing the way I saw you, the way I understood you, the way I loved you despite everything. It means feeling the weight of your own choices, the realization that the love you once had is now just a memory. And no matter how much time passes, no matter how much you try to fill the void, you will always know one thing. You had something real and you let it go. You'll search for a reaction, but all you'll find is at first you won't take it seriously. You'll assume this is just another one of those moments where I need space, where I pull back but eventually give in. You'll expect the same cycle, the tension, the silence, then the inevitable moment where I reach out, where I break first, where I let my emotions get the best of me. That's what you're counting on. That's what your ego has always relied on. But this time, it's different. This time the silence isn't a pause. It's the end. You'll test the waters, a casual message, a comment, something small, just to see if I'm still affected. Because that's what this has always been for you, a test. A game of control, of knowing how far you could push before I cracked. But when there's no response, no reaction, no sign that my silence is temporary, that's when the shift happens. That's when the discomfort sets in. Your ego thrives on validation, on knowing that you still have some level of control over my emotions, that no matter how much you hurt me, no matter how many times you took me for granted, I would always feel something strong enough to pull me back in. That's what made you feel powerful. The fact that I cared enough to fight, to argue, to react, But what happens when there's nothing left to react to? What happens when your words, your actions, your presence no longer shake me the way they once did? You'll search for the fire. You'll wait for the confrontation, for the anger, for anything that reassures you that I still care enough to be affected. But all you'll find is silence. And silence has a way of exposing the truth in ways words never could. It forces you to sit with yourself, with the weight of your own actions, with the realization that maybe, just maybe, you miscalculated this time. Maybe you assumed I would always be there, always willing to explain myself, always trying to fix what you continuously broke. But I'm not anymore. That silence will get to you. It will creep in during moments you never expected, in the middle of the night when you reach for your phone out of habit, only to realize there's no message waiting for you. In the quiet moments of your day, when you catch yourself expecting to hear from me, only to remember that I no longer exist in your world, you won't be able to ignore it. You won't be able to push it away. Because silence lingers. Silence is proof that something is missing, that something has changed, that something you once had is no longer there. You'll start to wonder, is it really over? Have I moved on? Am I happier without you? These questions will eat at you, not because you truly want to fix things, but because your ego can't handle the uncertainty. You were always so sure of my presence, so sure that no matter how many times you messed up, I would still be there, waiting, hoping, forgiving. But that security is gone now, and that will be the thing that destroys you the most. The silence will make you question everything. It will force you to relive the moments where you should have chosen differently, where you should have seen what was in front of you. The last conversation, the last time I reached out, the last time I gave you a chance to show me that you cared. Those moments will replay in your mind over and over again because now you understand that they were your last chances and you wasted them. You'll try to distract yourself, other people, meaningless conversations, temporary fixes to soothe the sting of my absence. But it won't work because deep down you'll know that none of them hold the weight that I did. None of them will react to you the way I once did. None of them will care the way I did. You will search for me in them, in places I used to be, in memories that no longer belong to you. And each time you come up empty, each time the silence remains, you will feel the reality of what you lost. Because silence doesn't just mean I'm gone. It means I no longer need to explain myself. I no longer need to justify my absence. I no longer need to prove my worth to someone who never saw it in the first place. My silence is not emptiness. It is my decision. It is my choice to no longer entertain anything that does not value me. And that will be the loudest sound you ever hear.